The competitive 40K network presents Art of War. Art of War. Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Art of War podcast. I'm your host, Nick Nanavati, and this week we are joined by a guest we've had on the show before, Ben Jurek. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic tonight, sir.
I'm doing great also. I'm super excited because you're one of my favorite people to have on the show. You're great at Warhammer. You're a rising star. You're coming from basically Who's Ben Jurek to crushing tournaments over and over and over. And you were actually the winner of the Charity Hammer tournament, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. So that's really awesome. Congratulations, Ben.
Yeah, thank you very much. I definitely appreciate all the compliments. I know that there's only been 3 people to ever win a Charity Hammer, and that's you, John Lennon, and now myself.
I know. Way to join our ranks. That's awesome. Okay, Ben. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have a 2-part show. Part 1 is going to be a bit focused on you. We're going to get to know you as a player. You're going to get to know your play style, your philosophy, your approach for the game. Talk about Charity Hammer a little bit, the list you brought to it, and really just kind of your plan for taking on 10th edition in this new world we find ourselves in. Then in part 2, we're going to talk about your specific list. Ben, you did play Eldar, the less improved but still very good Eldar army, and we're going to unpack exactly how it operates in this new world, what new Eldar lists will look like, and how they actually play on the table. And now that the meta is here and it's here to stay, I think it's going to be really important that we all understand what to do against such reckless firepower. So that'll be for part 2. That's our subscribers. You can subscribe right now on AOW40k.com. That is available for all of our patrons, along with our wonderful Discord server, which, Ben, I believe you're a part of.
Yes, I do lurk in the Discord. I post once in a while, but I'm just a lurker.
Nice. Can't blame you for that. All right, so I'm excited. Why don't we just start off with a little bit about yourself? How'd you get into Warhammer?
I got into Warhammer in late 2017. Actually rewind a little bit before that. In 4th edition, I had helped a game store install some carpet, and they gave me a bunch of store credit, and I bought Warhammer models with it. And I bought orcs, of course, at that time. And I played 0 games. I had maybe 1,000-point army put together, but I never played any games. I started collecting and doing stuff and never actually got in the game. Then in 2017, I took a trip to Europe with my wonderful wife, and we had perused some Warhammer stores. And it was at the beginning of 8th edition, end of 7th edition timeline, and the Triumvirate box was on the shelf and everything else. And she's like, oh, I kind of want to get these. You want to get some models too? And I was like, well, if we do it, we actually have to play this time. And that's literally the long story short of how that happened. So, but it is cute to say that my wife got me into playing Warhammer.
That's awesome. And, it's very rare to see a husband-wife couple go into tournaments and playing together. But I do see your wife go to these tournaments and to see you guys playing. You guys ever play each other? Is that competitive?
This year, actually, we ran into each other in round 2 of a GT, and I put her in the dirt real hard. And because I put her in the dirt so hard, she didn't get second; she got 3rd. But we both podiumed together, so it's fantastic.
Does this start some marital problems at home? Is that
no? Definitely not. She knows I play above board. That there was going to be no collusion of any sort. That is going to be a true result.
Nice, cool. Glad to hear it. Okay, so how did you go from installing carpets and your wife's getting you into Warhammer to crushing GTs? What does that journey look like for you?
So in 2018 was my first LVO, and I live in Vegas. So LVO was kind of a local thing for me. I didn't really plan around it. It was just I'm going to go to this event. Happens to be in town. And I went to LVO, and I went 4-2 at my first LVO. And had a cool gargantuan Squiggoth list with weird boy spam and such. And as I was that was my first oh, I can actually do this. Okay, I feel confident enough to do this again. Let's try this again. See how good I can do it.
That's awesome. That's very reassuring to have that just jump in the deep end, and then you actually can swim. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I that gave me a lot of confidence, and then I decided to play it, but also play it my way. And the playing it my way was sticking to orc index, doing only orc things, and not getting too outside my comfort zone, not traveling a whole ton. And then I kind of did like the same thing. I won like a local GT or two for like the next 2 years. I started like innovating in Orcless and always and kind of stayed in my lane and stayed in my corner until until COVID hit. Then nothing happened, and then right after COVID, I decided to just like push and travel and have fun. And in those travels, I started like going to East Coast events and flying more other events to kind of like do the U.S. tour and get an idea what Warhammer felt like on that stage. And I was doing well at all those events. I was, X1 and X2, and I wasn't winning anything particularly outside like a small regional thing. And I just missed top cut of a New Orleans tournament, and I was talking to Mark Perry. And he, it was kind of his something he said that's like really stuck with me. Where he goes, if you actually like put in the effort and put in the extra time rather than just like messing around, you'd be really good. And I kind of took those words to heart. And then within the next year, I started just like knocking it out of the park. And even did it my way because Orcs happened to be good in 9th edition. So I get up to that point and I finally win my first super major. I'd won like a small GT here or there, and I finally win SoCal Open. And there's a little bit of luck involved there, but you can check out that Art of War episode. It's somewhere in the archive. And I was just like, okay, this is what victory feels like. This is I feel like I'm the best player I've been at. And then comes the Team USA conversation, where through other channels and such, and me talking about my success at SoCal Open, it gets out that my next goal was to join Team USA. So I get brought on Team USA as someone who could to develop and become a prospect and possibly even start. And within like the next 3 or 4 months, it felt like a training montage, like a DBZ episode or something of like going Super Saiyan and finding new levels of play and this and that. And I'm playing Euros and scrimmages and playing some of the other best players from around the country and practicing and putting more effort than I've ever put in my life into this game. And suddenly by the time 10th comes out, it's go. And I'm just like, I'm just going to grab the most broken army in the game, take what I've learned and apply it. And that has produced fantastic results this summer. And those definitely speak for themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of players play Eldar. It's not like you're the only one out there doing it. And your results definitely stand out from theirs. And that's part of what we're going to unpack in this conversation. And hopefully through your teachings, we can learn how to combat this force and exactly what it looks like. But I want to talk a little bit more about your process getting better, because that's a huge journey with tons of lessons and philosophies attached to it. And we kind of glossed over it in like 2 minutes or less. So along that journey, that rigorous trial of going to local tournaments, getting that tour day Warhammer, you put its hat around the country. Not many players get to do that. You and I are both privileged in that regard. So what did you learn by traveling around America playing Warhammer with all these different groups and things of that nature? How does that develop you as a player?
You get an idea for like diverse metas. You get an idea of the who's who and who you should be playing, because I come from a competitive background. Warhammer is not the first thing I've been competitive at. And you learn really fast that to get better, you need to play people better than you or practice with people that are better than you. Seek those guys out and get your reps in with them. Because you're going to learn more in one game with somebody better than you you will 10 games with people that aren't playing at your level.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, it's the fastest way to get better at the game. And then as you started to get better, what were the kinds of lessons you were particularly learning for yourself?
A lot of lessons I learned was some 40K skills and some just like personal skills. A couple of the like personal skills was learning patience. Something that I never want to lose sight of and never forget is to lose graciously, to that we are playing plastic dollies, to just be cheerful, be happy, be a pleasure and a sportsman before a win at all costs. And then that I can never I don't want my integrity to ever be compromised by my need or drive to win. I want to be a great opponent. I want when my opponents are losing, I want them to feel secure, particularly outplayed. I don't want them to feel like they got cheated. I don't want them to feel like I'm being an asshole to them. I want them to feel that oh wow, this guy is everything that he says he is, or that the internet says he is, or whatever. Like I want to have that example. I don't want to be, someone that people dread playing because because of the player I am. They want to dread playing me because I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super glad you touched on that sportsmanship aspect. I think that always goes understood. It's obviously something we value incredibly highly here at Art of War, but I can never harp on this stuff enough. Like being able to work on yourself, not lose graciously, as you put it. It's like the perfect way. That's a huge element to it. And by losing graciously, you also become more self-evaluative and critical about what you actually did wrong because you accept the fact that, it's a game and I can get better at it and things like that.
So part of my journey was I got good fast. And then I plateaued. And I sat at that plateau for a long time until I put in that like extra effort I talked about. And that plateau was good enough to win some things. That plateau was good enough to get crushing defeat in the finals. I had an always the bridesmaid situation for a very long time.
I think a lot of players can relate to that, right? Who hasn't felt like the bridesmaid before, like they live in that lifestyle? How did you, like, what was that wall for you, that plateau, and then how did you get past it?
The plateau was just actually being warmed up and having like some sort of tournament prep. Actually approaching an event seriously and going, okay, I have an event this upcoming week. Here's the expected meta. Here's what I need to know how to play into. Let's get reps into that. I wasn't putting in that work before. I was just like, I know it in theory. I know it on paper. Or I played that last week. No, like I should be having a game on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before an event. Like that's not, if I'm not doing that, I'm not putting in the proper work and I don't deserve to win.
Wow, that's a pretty rigorous routine, but obviously you've been able to put in that work and then get the results, the benefits of that kind of effort. How do you restructure your life? Obviously, this is like an enormous amount of time commitment to play that much Warhammer in preparation for tournaments, which you then travel to.
So I actually found some of the, especially with TTS and the availability of the pool of people that are willing to practice with me, I found it to be easier to practice and get time and get games in than any other video game hobby, honestly. Because like to be good at particular video games, you need to have hundreds of hours of grinding in to stay fresh, and like you need to be practicing weekly and daily and have like time in on those video games. Where like I come from diamond, platinum, challenger level of various different games, and to stay sharp you need to play a lot. Warhammer actually requires less time. It's more the scheduling that is the issue.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. Yeah, I suppose you're right. It's like 3 hours a day for like 3 days a week. When you consider like what playing at an elite level in most hobbies are, it's far more intensive than that. So in that respect, it is actually not that bad. It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, when I was given the pitch to like what would be the player requirement to join the U.S. national team, it was like, yeah, you need to be practicing at least once or twice a week on these scrims, and I was like, are you saying I need to play 6 hours a week? Okay, like that's less time than I put into most things. All right, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, it's not so bad. So, talking about Team America, you mentioned like that is like your version of locking yourself in the hyperbolic time chamber and becoming a Super Saiyan, and then coming out and unleashing Eldar upon all the poor unsuspecting Warhammer players of the world. So what did that look like practicing for Team America, and then how did you get better as a player through that process?
A lot of it was, once again, playing players that are better than me and playing players that are the best at what they do. Because like I can go play a mid to high level player maybe once a month in my local area. At a particular faction, if I need to get a faction, where in like the TTS and team setting, I just be like, hey, I need a rep into XYZ, and like it's instant. It's not, I don't need to like go out of my way to try and get it. It's right there. And those with the ability of like through that technology and through actual also just like talking out games with players, because it's not always just about the game. It's always talking about like, well, tell me all the tricks, learn me on this army so I know how to play that army. I find myself way better in a situation where I know how to play my opponent's army better than they know how to play it.
It's a hard thing to be able to accomplish, and that's really just through like the repetitions, and then not only that, but like playing the game very conversationally with your opponent. I guess explaining all the moves you could be doing. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So like you talk through a game and you're like, is this the right play? Is this the wrong play? I should have ingressed here. Like there's, and then it goes all the way back to list building, where like we're constantly shooting lists at each other, and it's like, wait a minute. And sometimes you just find gold, and other times you all come to the same conclusion. So
Yeah. So it sounds like you've got like kind of your team of players that you bounce ideas off and play test with. Is that just your Team America buddies, or is that beyond that?
it's beyond that. Especially lately, I have a lot of people reaching out, trying to wanting the Eldar reps and the Eldar advice and such. So I get some practice games in with some Euros and also with some people around the United States.
And it just goes to show. I mean, you're not the first person who's come on the podcast and been like, I play a lot of TTS to get better. I mean, you just go online, find the people in the Discords, and basically, everyone's pretty friendly for the most part. They'll be willing to play. Is what it seems like.
Yeah, as long as like as long as I'm looking for the reps, I'm there for it. Problem is, I decline a lot of people, especially at this time, because like with my travel schedule, I have sometimes just don't have time, especially in the week we even practice. But I'm like, okay, I already put in 18 hours of this marathon Warhammer here. I think I'm good. So.
Well, understandably so. But I guess like more to my point, like all those people that are asking you for a game are also available for games.
Yep, there. Yeah, and there's no shortage of games in practice to be had with high level opponents. Significant. There's none at all. Like if you are having a trouble finding an opponent, that's on you.
Right. So let's transition the conversation a little bit from like how you actually got better in that process to, well, what do you do now? Because as far as I've known you, Ben, I've like followed your 40K career from when you were just getting started in 2017, really, and now watching you crush tournaments is pretty cool. But you've always been an orc player, and a very oddball, wacky orc player at that, running Stompas before they were cool and stuff like that. So, how did you transform yourself into this Wraith Knight murder machine?
So there was definitely the conversation of you don't need to limit yourself. You can just play the broken stuff. And I wanted to do that for once. And I actually had no idea how busted 10th Eldar would be. I just knew I was playing Eldar from when the starting pistol went off. Like I played the first weekend of the 10th edition release, and I was like, yeah, I know it's super busted. I know there's other busted stuff out there, but I know this is probably the most busted, and that's what I'm going to play and apply my skill level to and see how far it takes me. And I get a lot of flack for it. Like that's probably the thing I get the most flack for is the fact that I'm an orc trader. And especially right now, like post slate, orcs are pretty good. Like they're I would put them in the A tier if we're talking like an S through ABC type of tier. But they don't beat Eldar, and Eldar beat a lot of things they don't beat. So I'm probably not switching, much to other people's like dismay.
Yeah, you hate to see it just because, there's always that orc loyalty and, a faction specialist. But you're absolutely right. Like, there is no need to limit yourself. I remember when I won ITC, I had a very similar kind of personal realization, like an aha moment. I don't need to limit myself. It's just a game, So, like, it's just an example. I was like a long-time diehard Chaos player. And then it was pretty clear it would be very uphill to try to win LVO with Chaos at that time. But Eldar was like a new shiny double Spear and Ari, so put some brains to that and look at the results. It's funny
and also rewind a bit. A lot of this is scope of goals. For the longest time, I wasn't trying to be a top 20 ITC. I wasn't trying to be top at ELO. Like those weren't goals for me. Those wasn't in my scope what I was trying to do. I wanted to be one of the best orc players. That's what I wanted to do, and that was my scope and that was my goal, and I accomplished that multiple times. I never finished number one. Sean Naden swooped in, took it from me this past year, but yeah. But I always stayed in the top three. I was always regarded as one of the better war bosses in the country, and that was my scope. I never put my horizons or my sights on being where I am now, or doing what I'm doing. Not until after basically some team pep talks within like the USA channels of just like you know what, like let's uncage this beast and see how wild I can get with it.
No, I totally get that, and it's obviously been working super well for you. One would assume that like Orcs are a very aggressive play style and pretty much nothing like Eldar. Like an Orc play style is like getting themselves killed to try to win on points. And Eldar is like, I never want to take a hit in the first place. That's got to be a rapid mentality shift. I mean, once you get it, you get it. But what was that journey like switching mindsets and play styles for you?
Well, the last episode I was on here, I talked about how I was playing Orcs is kind of like checkers, but I have more pieces, and that comes down to what Art of War might teach us as a having more activations and whichever. With Eldar, they just cheat. They cheat out 3 or 4 activations on things through movement or or elsewise, or being able to save their unit or not have their unit get interacted with. And there's such an uninteractive army that you activate 3 times, steal 3 of their checker pieces, and they get to steal 0 of yours. And it wasn't too hard of a switch once it clicked that, like, oh, you're just doing 1 move to capitalize on 3. Or in the Wraith Knight's sake, with how busted it was, like, you could, with the amount of shooting phases you got between regular shooting phase, Overwatch, and whatnot, like, you just got way more activations and way more value out of your Wraith Knight than you could anything else. And I come from a Magic the Gathering background, and 2 for 1, 3 for 1 is a common statement in that game, where like you're using 1 card to deal with 3 of somebody else's cards, and like that's how you win those games. You want to take people to Value Town, and all Eldar is Value Town. Yeah,
pretty much that. So would you, in this post-balanced data slate world, would you still consider Eldar the strongest army in the game?
Absolutely.
Not even a hesitation. Do you think other armies can compete and hang with Eldar?
Yes. And I say that with a fresh look, and seeing what other armies can do. It's no longer Eldar are no longer completely unfair to everybody. They're only unfair to the have-nots. And the have-nots are anybody like the B or lower tier. I think anything A tier, with the exception of like maybe CK, are very competitive in Eldar. And a lot of it's going to come down to piloting. The thing is that like an Eldar player can make a mistake and just lose now, where previously, if an Eldar player made a mistake, it just didn't matter. They can make 3, 4, 5 mistakes. It didn't matter. Their list and their power of that index would cover it up. So what helped you in the Sea of Eldar mirrors, where your Eldar has to fight like 4 other Eldars to win a tournament? And that's, pre-balanced data slate, when it's just Wraith Knights killing Wraith Knights. How were you able to consistently defeat those? Knowing the mirror better than anybody else. Knowing that, like, if I'm going to win this tournament, I have to beat the mirror. Literally everything else doesn't matter. With, like, Kron's giving me a pause for a second. Like, knowing that, like, the matchups, like, if I'm not winning the matchups that aren't the mirror, I don't deserve to be here. And the mirror is the thing I need to focus on, so that's the thing I practiced.
What does practicing the mirror look like? Is it just, like, playing yourself, playing other Eldar players on TTS?
Playing myself, losing the Quentin at WTC, things like that.
Yeah, losing is a great way to learn it, for sure.
It's Quentin's actually one of my. I have 3 losses in 10th edition with Eldar. Quentin's one of my only losses.
Well, Quentin's one of our Art of War coaches, so that stuff does work too. So Ben, talk to me a little bit about this event that you went to. Was this your first Charity Hammer?
This is my first Charity Hammer, yes.
What was Charity Hammer like?
Charity Hammer was just a giant event. Well, I shouldn't say giant event. It was a gathering of wonderful human beings that I would gladly spend 72 hours with any of them. It is a gathering of some of the not only best players in 40K, but also just some of like the greatest humans to be around. And we're all there for a good cause. We're all there with the same mindset. There's like, if you want, like, you can go to a tournament, you're always going to see some salt or some, somebody like going to be mad or disappointed. There's literally, this is a Warhammer tournament / event / hangout, but there's 0 of that. We're all here just having a blast. Like, we all know, we all got to know each other. Some of us had met for the first time. It was, a great meet and greet. I got to see, plenty of people that I've bet, and been friends throughout the years, or some people that have been following me. And it was just great to be there. War Games Live Joe was there. So like we had all the community interaction this year. It was stunning.
Yeah, it sounds great. So basically, charity event, for those who don't know, is like a once in a year event held by Colin Sherman and the Best in Faction podcast guys. The guy puts it on in his own house, out of his his own dime. It's a very nice, hospitable thing, and it raises money for Child's Play, which is a charity for children who are in need, especially when they're sick or in the hospital, things like that. And it's saying, Ben, it's just an amazing experience to be at and be a part of, and really help share the hobby in a really positive way for the world. And it's got the world's hardest RTT, or so it's branded.
They didn't. It wasn't branded the hardest this year. Just out of the attendance, but we do have everybody that participated in a GT. Nick, may I remind you that it is definitely everybody that is playing has won a GT or something of the sort at some point. And it definitely was seeded and bracketed and done a little bit differently than like your Swiss pairings, but it definitely made that a lot more interesting. And we even had like a bracket, like an NCAA type thing, which was super hype. That was a lot of fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, so it was 32 players, and I believe you were first seed, right, Ben?
Yeah, ended up being 30 because I had a few drops due to people being sick. But I was first seed and John Lennon was second seed, so we both got first round buys.
Nice. And I think a lot of players expected you and John to make it to the finals. I mean, as you would with first, second seed, but that did not happen at all. John got knocked out early.
Yeah, actually, the first and second seed have never played in Charity Hammer in the finals.
Is that real? Wow.
Yep, that's a real statistic. The other piece of that is that because of that, we kicked off the event with an exhibition match between me and John. So you can check that out on War Games Live.
Who won the exhibition match?
John did by 5 points.
Oh, did you check that out? John with the janky Tyranids. Maybe we'll get him on a different episode.
It was my first rep with that version of Eldar, and I didn't know what Tyranids did at all. So it was definitely a learning game for me.
So Ben, I want to take this moment to transition the conversation into what you actually took to Charity Hammer. If you want to just read your list top to bottom in this post-balanced data slate world, we can then unpack it in part 2 of our conversation, which will be for subscribers, of course, on the AOW40k.com.
So this is the Eldari, obviously, and my characters are the Autarch Wayleaper. He's equipped with a Dragon Fusion Gun, Howling Banshee Mask, and a Starglaive. The Avatar Arcane, a Farseer with no enhancements, and the Incarn. In my other datasheets portion of my list, I have 2 sets of Dark Reapers, 2 Fire Prisms, 1 Night Spinner, 1 set of Shroud Runners, 2 Warwalkers, and a group of Warp Spiders. Pretty lean.
Pretty lean. Looks like your normal Eldar list. Of course, we're not looking at the Wraith Knight. Obviously, he's not really in consideration like he used to be. That's quite a big hole, right? Like not having a Wraith Knight when you used to take a Wraith Knight. I mean, he was such a crutch to stand on, and not to imply that Eldar needs the crutch. Obviously, a lot of other things, and that's what we're going to unpack in this conversation. But when the Wraith Knight got nerfed, what was the first thing that went through your head in terms of what you were going to do?
I was looking at my original idea was Yunari pivot. However, with the increase to Ravagers, and kind of like once I actually built that list out, it just didn't look as good as I wanted it to be. And then it left out options like Fuegan and such, where you can't take like Phoenix Lord or anything. And then I immediately switched back to Eldar and started like I ran through some lists, ran some Prismless lists, looked at some Wraithguard lists, looked at some of the standard stuff, and I landed on 2 lists for Charity Hammer. I was going to either run 10 Wraithguard Incarn with 2 Fire Prisms and some Indirect, or I was going to run double Avatar. And I was like, well, for Charity and for Stream, we're running Monsters. So that's how we ended up on that list. Double
Avatar for Charity. Eldar's version of Charity is a little bit different than mine.
I just thought it'd look a lot more fun, less boring than 10 Wraithguard walking from behind a wall, blasting something and phantasming back.
That's true. So would you say this is like your strongest Eldar list, or is this just one of many?
This is one of many. This is probably, especially with like, I have like 240 points of stuff that I didn't really enjoy in this list. So this list is definitely changing. This isn't the end all be all. But I have other versions of Double Avatar that are a little bit more efficient. Plus, I still have the obvious Wraithguard list I mentioned. And then there's other variations where you don't even have Fire Prisms and junk like that.
All right, everybody, we're going to wrap this conversation up right there because I have so many questions I want to ask them, but they are all for part 2. That is available for our subscribers on AOW40k.com. For just $5 a month, you get access to all of Ben's knowledge in part 2 of this episode, plus part 2 of all of our other episodes, access to that archive where Ben has been on the show before, along with 200 other episodes, and our amazing Discord server. So if you like this podcast, thank you so much for joining us, and please show your support. Check it out on our website, AOW40k.com. Ben, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely, anytime. Listeners, we will see you over in part 2. Thanks so much, and we'll be back.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. The Art of War 40K.com.